So today we're going to be talking about the state of the union of NFTs, and I have two amazing guests here who are going to walk you guys through it. So here we have two world-famous NFT collectors. First we have, on the right side, we've got Punk. Punk6529 is among the world's most foremost collectors and thought leaders in NFTs. He has founded the 6529 Museum, 6529 Capital, and is involved with OM, which is a decentralized open metaverse platform. Then on the left, a little more animated today, we've got Whale Shark. So Whale Shark is known as one of the largest collectors of NFTs in the world, more than 400,000 NFTs collected since 2019, which he then tokenized into a community called Whale, which is one of the largest social token meet NFT communities in the world with more than 25,000 members. Punk, Whale, I have a lot of questions for you guys. I think the feeling right now, well, look, we're in a bear market. You guys have probably heard a lot of rah-rah, crypto's great panels, but we just got the news that NFTs are down a lot, pretty down bad right now. A lot of people are hurting out there. So let's address the elephant in the room. Were NFTs a bubble? And if they were not a bubble, how do you explain what happened? Whale Shark, please.
Haseeb, once again, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with the audience at Token2049 today, and that's a wonderful and poignant question. I guess my response to that would be that all industries really go through bubbles and pops on their way to mass adoption. It was the exact same that we saw with the internet, and it was the exact same that we saw with cryptocurrencies and continue to see with cryptocurrencies. It essentially is just a Darwinism in the financial system to make sure that the strongest and the most applicable projects survive, right? And this time around, I think I would point out that NFTs were actually in a bubble in tandem with the latest crypto bubble. So, when you have the predominant amount of capital entering the NFT market that were crypto gains, essentially when crypto started crashing, so did the relevant gains from DeFi, resulting in less liquidity being able to enter into the NFT market.
Fair enough. Okay. That's a very tight answer. Punk, what's your response?
I'd like to answer that two different ways. Right? I'll give you a narrow answer and a broader answer. The narrow answer, I think, is you should think about NFTs as being at the level of maturity of the crypto industry in 2012, 2013. Right? Total market cap never exceeded about $20 billion. All NFTs together didn't make one Dogecoin. Market cap today is maybe around 10, something in that range. And so this is an audience that I think I don't need to explain it in detail. Did it mean when we crashed from 2013 to 2015, both Bitcoin and thousands of altcoins, all the altcoins that were on Cryptsty that disappeared and never to be seen again? Did it mean cryptocurrency was a bubble? If it wasn't a bubble, why did the prices go down? I mean, we have the single most mature tokens in crypto that are down 70%, right? So I would expect, just like ETH has been more volatile than BTC and other coins have been more volatile than ETH, NFTs are the far bleeding edge of the crypto industry. They will be more volatile than other L1s, they'll be more volatile than ETH, they'll be more volatile than Bitcoin, and the coins that we say are our mature established competitors, our stalwarts, are down 70%. So of course NFTs are going to be down. It would be bizarre if the whole crypto industry went down 70% and NFTs went up in US dollar terms. What's interesting is if you see the higher end collections, they've more or less traded with ETH, right? And so one of the very unusual things that's happening with NFTs is you're seeing for the first time a cryptocurrency, in this case, Ether, being used as a unit of account. I think most of the big collectors actually think of themselves as being long ETH and primarily think of their NFTs in ETH terms under the theory that ETH will do well over time. If ETH doesn't do well, if Bitcoin doesn't do well, of course NFTs aren't going to do well. But let's say the narrow financial answer. The broader answer is none of this matters to me, not even 1%. What we have with NFTs is a platform for the representation of arbitrary, non-fungible digital objects, right? Arts, collectibles, brands, metaverse buildings, metaverse land. Are we going to have more digitization of the world? Are we going to need to represent things that are more than fungible tokens? This is obviously true, right? Every single large tech company is pouring tens of billions of dollars to create this world. And we call it metaverse, right? But the metaverse is just the internet with better visualization, right? And we're going to end up with the same decision that was the Bitcoin decision for money and the ETH decision for smart contracts, which is in 2 and 5 and 10 and 15 years. If you want to buy a piece of digital art, you can buy it as a token on a decentralized permissionless blockchain, or you can buy it in someone's database. There is zero chance you tell me the price of Fidenzas go down tomorrow, then I'm going to say, oh, that's great. I'm going to go buy my next piece of digital art from Facebook Digital Art Services Limited, and it's fine. I'll be a user on a terms of service agreement there, right? So none of the price of any particular NFT collection today is, for me, irrelevant. The idea that this won't matter over a decade, to me, is absurd. Of course it's going to matter.
Okay, so I hear you that it's clear that the concept of NFTs has been burned into our collective consciousness now. Like, this idea is not going back in the box. The market for NFTs has, that might be hurt for a little while. You guys have now seen this drawdown. It's not the first major drawdown in NFTs, but how is this fed into your mental model of how the NFT market works? Like, what dictates the prices of NFTs? Is it macro? Is it the prices of crypto? Is it something else going on in the broader culture? What have you learned from the cycle about how NFTs are valued? Whale, I'd like to hear from you first.
Well, for the first thing, I'd like to fully agree with what 6529 said about the immaturity of the market. I mean, we are really, really early days. Back in 2019 and 2018, when we were actually buying NFTs, we thought we were early then. But, when you look at the amount that the technology needs to grow, the content needs to grow, again, to 6529's point, we are very early in the market. But similar to what he said as well, regarding the metaverse, we're also investing in inevitability, right? So I do think we are on the right track. Now, given that, previous to the crypto, a full cycle of a crypto bull run and a bear run, I think a lot of people said, hey, since non-fungible tokens are non-fungible, then in that case, they should be immune to the ups and downs of the larger market, right? I think what a lot of people failed to realize as we saw the pump in 2020 and 2021, is that people failed to realize that, we weren't going mainstream. What was happening with NFTs is that a lot of the money from the larger crypto environment, so whether that be cryptocurrencies or in DeFi, was actually flowing directly into the NFT market, in search of further gains. Now, a lot of people have realized this now, but when you actually have a demographic of money that is predominantly looking for short-term gains, looking for pump, naturally, I would say that the leading indicator for NFT prices today are actually the prices of the crypto market. Now, in the future, is it possible that high-end NFT art can debunk the cycles of cryptocurrency, of the overall macroeconomic situation, and become a safe haven for capital? Absolutely so. However, I do think that we are quite far away from that. And, again, when you're looking at the market, it's still relatively small. When you look at some of the most prominent projects, I would say they have anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 holders. And in that case, really the price action and the financial action is actually limited to a very limited market.
Got it. Punk, actually, I want to give you a different question. So you're obviously famous for your PFP, which is a CryptoPunk. PFP stands for profile picture. In this cycle, we've seen that the dominant form of NFT has really been the PFP. Do you think that the PFP in 5 years is going to continue to be the dominant form of NFT? If not, why not?
Look, the PFP, in a way, is the starter NFT for a lot of people, right? And it's the starter NFT because it's easier to get your heads around, right? Like if you think to yourself, let's say you've never bought an NFT and you want to invest, I don't know, $20,000 in NFTs. If you go to a PFP collection, understanding which ones are theoretically rare, more valuable, more desired, which ones aren't, how rare they are, how rare they're not, is more straightforward than looking at thousands of generative art pieces and understanding which artists are important and important even off-chain and what distinguishes great generative art from good generative art. And possibly that's still easier than going through the vast world of one artists, where there's a huge spread of NFTs to pick from. And if you're not a specialist in these areas, it's very, very difficult, right? The most common question people have is, I want to buy an NFT, but how do I know? There's so many of them, right? So what what PFPs have done is onboarding, in effect. It is easier, safer, more comprehensible, more readable to someone to say, I'm going to buy a punk, a toad, an ape, whatever it is, right? Now, I believe most PFP collections are not going to have good financial performance, but I also believe most NFTs are not going to have good financial performance. Just like I believe most altcoins aren't going to have good financial performance, right? There are 3,000 altcoins. How many of them do you believe in? I don't believe in very many at all, right? The tech world has power law outcomes. The art world has power law outcomes. If there are millions of pieces of art created every year around the world, but the average person, if I ask them, how many pieces can you name offhand, unaided recall in the Louvre, the most famous museum in the world? 9 out of 10 people can't name 5. Right? The Louvre has 35,000 pieces on display, 300,000 pieces in the galleries. Getting into the Louvre is a power law success for an artist beyond imagination. And the reality is, if you're not in the 5, 10, 15 top pieces, nobody even knows you're there, right? Unless you're an art historian. So the fact that PFP collections are volatile in price, the fact that a lot of them won't succeed, I don't think is any different than other parts of the space that will be volatile in price and not succeed. And PFPs have something that is somehow looked down on, underappreciated, but I also think that's not exactly right. My view is someday, everyone's going to have a PFP. Now, it might be a 3D avatar, it might be something else. PFPs have product market fit, right? Look, Whale Shark is not a believer in PFPs, but he's effectively wearing a PFP in this call, right? Maybe it's not an NFT, maybe it doesn't have value, but he has an avatar. I have an avatar. In a decade when this conference is going to be an augmented reality, my guess half of the audience is going to have an avatar. So there is product market fit there. PFPs are going to be useful, right? I mean, I am certainly a person who's going to believe this, right? I roll around as Punk 6529 all day long. Now, whether your specific PFP is going to be worth $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, for the purposes of this discussion, who cares, right? Nobody, certainly not me, is saying, if you buy any random token on the planet, you're guaranteed super high investment returns. Why does this matter, right? But the flip case that billions of people are going to onboard into the metaverse, everyone's going to have avatars, but none of them will have value, seems hard to imagine, right? So difficult to judge which ones will have value and none of them will have value. To me, none of them will have value is just as incorrect a statement as all of them will have value, right? A few of them will have value and then there'll be a long tail. Most of them will not, and that's fine because that's how the rest of the world works, right? There's some very nice expensive watches, right? Ultra expensive ones, and then Rolex, which you think of as an elite watch, right? There's 1 million Rolexes sold every year. A Rolex is a...
So Punk, let me jump off of that. So, as you were mentioning, most PFP collections, most NFT collections don't really have a ton of product market fit. But PFPs, on the whole, there's a small number of collections that really matter, have managed to kind of penetrate the cultural zeitgeist. Some of them obviously come to mind, like CryptoPunks. Of course, you have a CryptoPunk, Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, Moonbirds, Azuki, Doodles. what would you say? I mean, we've now developed these subcultures around them. Whale, I'd be curious to get your kind of snapshot. For each of these major collections, what do they symbolize? Like when you see somebody that has a Moonbird, you see somebody who has a CryptoPunk, what does it mean about them that they have each of those collections?
And again, 6529 pointed it out very aptly, right? Not all of us are going to agree on the future direction, or how this NFT market is going to develop. But similar to what 6529 said, I do believe that profile pics do have a role to play in the NFT market that we see today. However, is it a leading role? In my opinion, I do think that there are more important NFT asset classes that leverage the technology rather than creating the most fungible of non-fungible tokens, right? But tongue-in-cheek, Haseeb, I'm more than happy to give you an answer here, right? So the first one you brought up was CryptoPunks. I would say CryptoPunks represent, as 6529 represents, we are the NFT OGs, unless we are just loaded enough to buy one, right?
So punks are the OGs. Okay.
The punks are the OGs. Punks are the OGs. I think we got Doodles coming. We also had Doodles. Doodles was actually pretty popular recently. And sorry, all of my answers, guys, are just tongue-in-cheek. 6529 knows that. Again, I love the entire space. However, again, more focused on art. With Doodles, I would say, we want to be Disney, but all of our PFPs look the same, right? Sorry, 6529. And then after that, I guess, why don't we just do two more, all right? So Moonbirds, again, I paid $10,000 for merch, right? And I would say the last one, BAYC, again, I love the fact that it introduced a lot of people into the NFT world. But again, I think there are more important asset classes that we can be looking at. But for BAYC, I would say, at BAYC, we think we're counterculture, but we are actually just puppets of Hollywood. So just a couple of tongue-in-cheek answers from my side.
Got it. Okay. Punk, anything you disagree with there or anything you want to elaborate on?
My view is more structural, horizontal, something like that, right? It's something, this discussion is something like we've invented television. And maybe the half-hour show. And the discussion is like, well, I don't like Seinfeld. Who cares? Someone likes Seinfeld. Some other people aren't going to like Seinfeld. Seinfeld will be popular, then it will be unpopular, and then it will get canceled, right? The question we should be asking here, do sitcoms and TV shows did they have a bright future ahead of them in the 1960s? Sure. Will every TV show be appropriate for every viewer? No. This is a NFTs transport culture, right? They're not going to have the same network effects as Bitcoin, where you're going to say, oh, well, everyone should use the same money. So one of the things that I think people struggle with from the fungible world is they get too caught up of, I don't like the particular aesthetics of this particular NFT collection. And my answer to this is, who cares? Why does this matter even 1%? It's like me saying, art is not a real thing because I went to a museum and I saw a piece of art and I didn't like that piece of art. There's different types of NFTs, there's different types of PFPs, there's different types of one-on-one generated art collections that match any aesthetic. If your aesthetic is, I don't know, Thai hyper-futuristic, you can find a community who's into that, right? By the way, if you can't, because the network effects aren't as strong, you can make your own. Right? It's very implausible to say, oh, I don't really like something about Bitcoin, I'm going to make Bitcoin too. People try, but it never works. There is nothing implausible to say, I don't like the aesthetics or the Hollywoodness or whatever of Bored Apes. Great, make a better one. I look at all of these PFP collections as being very, very young, very, very early, very, very small. The average number of holders is 2,000 to 5,000 people. This is nothing, right? These are social global communities. If you think about in social media, is 5,000 people a big community, right? It's a nothing community. So we will see different versions roll out. We will see changes. We will see much bigger collections. And all of that is fine. I'll leave a statistic for the audience to consider. In early Bitcoin years, one of the things that we used to say was, oh, well, the addressable market is money supply. And people say, is it M0, is it M1? Some also say it's gold, right? And depending on how you measure these things, we're going to say, well, look, there's an addressable market of $10 trillion, and we're going to try and move it to cryptocurrency. And then people get all worked up, particularly system people, they say, wait, we're going to lose our sovereign currency and lose control of the state and all these things. And this is where you have this continuous clash with the state. The estimates of intangible assets that are measurable, that are on balance sheet. There's intangible assets that are not measurable. The US flag is an intangible asset, but you're not going to find it on someone's balance sheet, but it's real. It has value, right? It drives the value of the United States. It's somewhere in the range of $77 trillion. NFTs are generic carriers for intangible assets. Now, some of that $77 trillion is the Nike brand cultural objects. Some of them are Louis Vuitton. Some of them are Casio. Some of them are the Ohio State University Buckeyes, right? All of these cultural objects, these brands have value. They are today not directly ownable, not directly transportable, but with NFTs they are. So from my perspective, we have an asset class that today has plus or minus $10 billion transported on it, and a bunch of collections, some of them wonderful, but most of them junk, right? Most stuff is junk. But it is a technology that can onboard on-chain $80 trillion. And across that $80 trillion, there is different styles, different aesthetics, different communities, different philosophical principles. And as I heard in the prior session about paper, NFTs are also a generic neutral technology, right? And so my general guidance to people coming from the fungible world to think about the non-fungible world, they spend too much time getting stuck on the aesthetics of any particular piece of art they like or don't like, and not enough time thinking about what can you generically move on-chain non-fungible, because most of the world market cap off-chain is in non-fungible objects, not in fungible objects.
So we're running short on time. I want to wrap with a very brief question, maybe 1 minute from each of you. So we've been through this boom and bust. We've been here before, whether in Bitcoin, whether in ICOs, with Ethereum land, and now in NFTs. What do you think you have seen over this last cycle as being the best critiques of the NFT space or the NFT ethos? Punk, why don't you go first? 1 minute.
I think we have a ton of work to do on usability, right? It's very easy to lose your NFTs. It's unclear what people think that they're buying and so on. It's not actually unclear in substance, but usability still is terrible. It's a general crypto issue, but here we're taking people on-chain in self-sovereign wallets as opposed to being in exchanges. And so we have a massive amount of work, on education, but also the industry providers do not take user safety seriously, right? We're like automobile manufacturers. Before we put seatbelts and anti-lock brakes and what have you, you can still be permissionless, you can still be self-sovereign, but you can use software tools to help people from making mistakes. And to me, this is the major issue. I do not yet feel comfortable sending a crypto naive person to transact in size, on scale. I think the chances they're going to mess something up are significant. And if we don't fix that, we can't onboard large numbers of people.
Yeah. So usability, security. Whale Shark, what's your answer?
So firstly, I just want to say, again, being on stage with 6529 was truly an honor, and I really do applaud his inclusivity approach to the answers that he provided today. But the best critiques for me are, number one, NFT technology is just that. It's a technology, like the TCP and IP protocols that are required for us to use the internet, and it's not an industry. So when we approach NFT as an industry, I think it's fallacious, and really art is an industry, gaming is an industry, VR and the metaverse are an industry, NFTs are not. They are just a technological enabler. The second critique I'd have is that NFTs are for the rich, and again, this is sadly true because as I've pointed out, and as 6529 has pointed out, for a lot of these collections, you only have 6 to 10,000 people collecting this. And we need to find a way to move beyond the crypto bros and the crypto broettes and really allow, as 6529 said, have an onboarding process to be able to allow every single body, including your grandmother, to be able to hold an NFT easily and safely. The last thing I'll add, contrary to, a lot of the hype and the moon and the FOMO that we used to see, is that wash trading and financial hijinks are rampant at all levels. DYOR, do your own research. I refuse to be a part of anything other than investing in transparent long-term value. But I think it's been very interesting and a very good piece to think about the fact that a term like rug, which is usually used for something like fungible tokens, have now been applied to non-fungible tokens as well. So I would just advise the audience to keep safe out there. This is a booming and a growing industry, and it's going to be a lot of fun as we see its development.
Well, what I've heard loud and clear from you guys is that we're still in the early innings. We have a lot of work to do. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us from across the metaverse. Can we get a round of applause for these guys?
All right.